Once upon a time, in the heart of Yogyakarta, there lived a married couple named Budi and Ani, not their real name. They had been together for many years, bound by love and perseverance, yet fate had not granted them the one thing they longed for, a child of their own. Every night, Ani would stare at the empty crib they had prepared years ago, whispering prayers into the silence, hoping that one day it would not remain empty. To sustain their modest life, Budi and Ani ran a small grocery store, a simple shop stocked with daily necessities. The store was neither big nor luxurious, but it was enough to keep food on their table and a roof over their heads. Though their earnings were modest, they were content. But contentment did not last forever. The economy began to falter, and so did their customers. At first they thought it was temporary, a bad week, a bad month. Then the bad months turned into a year. The once lively chatter of customers bargaining for rice, sugar, and cooking oil faded into a suffocating silence. Desperation crept in. They tried everything. Discounts, promotions, nothing worked. Then came the debts. At first it was just a small loan to cover restocking, then another to pay the bills, and another to put food on their own table. But the debts only grew, piling on top of each other like a mountain they could no longer climb. Budi, exhausted and defeated, reached out to his relatives. He swallowed his pride, pleading for help. Some sympathized, but none could afford to spare a single coin. The rejections stung, each one a reminder of how alone they were in their suffering. It was during one of these desperate conversations that an old friend of Budi's pulled him aside. "There is someone who might help you," the friend said in a hushed voice. "Go to X village. There is a woman there, an elder. People say she has ways to bring fortune to those who ask." Budi hesitated. The idea of seeking out a mystical solution unsettled him. But what choice did they have? Their shop was failing. Their debts were suffocating them. Their dreams of having a child were slipping further away. That night he told Ani about the suggestion. She was skeptical at first, but as they sat in the dim light of their near-empty home, the weight of their struggles pressing down on them, she nodded. "If there is even the slightest chance to save our future," she whispered, "we have to take it." And so, with nothing left to lose, they closed their store, left their worries behind, and set off towards X village, towards the unknown. The journey to X village began early in the morning. Budi and Ani boarded a worn-out bus from the city. The farther they travelled, the more civilization faded behind them. The bustling city streets gave way to open fields, then to dense forest stretching endlessly on both sides. After what felt like hours, they finally saw a few scattered houses. The village was small, old, and surrounded by jungle. It was unsettlingly quiet. The few houses that lined the road were old, their wooden walls darkened with age. Some villagers sat on their porches, watching Budi and Ani with unreadable expressions. No one greeted them. No one smiled. It was as if they were expected, but not welcomed. Budi approached a middle-aged man chopping firewood near the entrance of a house. "Excuse me, sir," he said cautiously. "We're looking for the village elder. We were told she might be able to help us." The man froze. Slowly he turned to face them, his eyes scanning them up and down. After a long silence, he sighed and pointed toward a house at the far end of the village. "You'll find her there," he muttered, "but be careful what you ask for." The warning sent a chill down Arnie's spine. but Budi simply nodded. Together, they walked toward the elder's house. The house was different from the others. Older, its wooden walls weathered by time. A thick scent of incense hung in the air, seeping through the cracks in the door. Just as Budi raised his hand to knock, the door creaked open on its own. Inside, an old woman sat on the floor, dressed in a red kabaya. Her hair was pulled back into a tight bun, her face marked with deep wrinkles. She did not seem surprised to see them. "You seek wealth," she said, her voice low and raspy, "and you are willing to pay the price." Budi and Ani stiffened. They hadn't spoken a word, yet she knew. "There is a way," the elder continued, "but once you step onto this path, there is no turning back." Budi swallowed hard. "We'll do whatever it takes." The elder studied them for a long moment before standing up. She motioned for them to follow. Without another word, she led them outside, away from the village, toward the jungle. After what felt like an eternity, the trees suddenly parted, revealing an open field, a hidden clearing untouched by time. The vast expanse of land was overgrown with banana trees. The air was thick with the scent of ripening fruit, yet something about the place felt wrong. At the very center of this banana plantation stood a massive gayam tree. Unlike the banana trees surrounding it, which were thin and clustered together, the gayam tree was ancient and solitary. Its colossal trunk was gnarled and twisted, its bark darkened with age, its roots sprawling across the earth like veins pulsing beneath the surface. "This tree," the elder finally spoke, her voice slow, deliberate, "is no ordinary tree." She ran her wrinkled fingers across its ancient bark. "It is a gate, a threshold between our world and another. Beyond it lies a kingdom, one ruled by a being of immense power." Budi and Ani listened in silence, trying to push away the unease creeping up his spine. "You seek wealth," the elder continued, "and wealth can be given to you, but only if you are willing to pay the price." Budi shifted uncomfortably. "What do we have to do?" The elder turned, her gaze sharp and unreadable. "You must enter the kingdom of Buto Ijo," she said. "He is the ruler of the unseen realm, and he alone has the power to grant you what you desire." Buto Ijo. The name itself sent a chill through the air. The elder gestured toward the base of the tree. "To reach his kingdom, you must first prove your worth. For 3 days and 3 nights you must remain beneath this tree. You shall not eat. You shall not drink. You shall not leave, no matter what happens." The elder added, "If you endure, the path will open, and the Buto Ijo king will hear your request." Budi furrowed his brows, staring at the towering tree before him. A kingdom? Beyond a tree? It sounded impossible. How could such a thing exist? Was this woman testing them? He couldn't explain it, but something about this place unsettled him in a way that had nothing to do with logic. Budi took a deep breath, then looked back at the elder. "We'll do it." The elder's expression remained unreadable. "Then let the tree decide your fate." With that, she turned and stepped back into the banana plantation, vanishing as swiftly as she had come. Budi and Ani were alone now. They stood beneath the massive gayam tree in the middle of the clearing. The elder from X village had given them clear instructions. 3 days and 3 nights of fasting and meditation. No food, no water. No matter what happened, they could not leave. As the first day passed, the hunger was manageable. When night fell, the forest around them came alive. Crickets and owls called out, but there was something else. Whispers, faint but unmistakable. By the second night, the hunger turned into sharp pain, and their throats burned with thirst. The whispers grew louder, forming incomprehensible sentences. Shadows moved between the trees, but whenever Budi tried to focus on them, they disappeared. Then came the first real test. A rustling sound from the bushes. At first it was soft, like an animal foraging. Then it became heavier, closer. A long, sinuous shape slithered across the clearing. A snake, thick and dark, its eyes glowing red in the moonlight. It stopped right in front of them, raising its head, flicking its tongue as if tasting their fear. Annie gasped, her breath ragged, but Budi gritted his teeth. They remained still, frozen in place as the snake circled them, brushing against their legs before finally vanishing into the darkness. They sat in silence, their breaths shallow, their limbs trembling. But the night was not over yet. Hours later, the air turned unnaturally cold. A deep growl echoed from beyond the trees. Then another. Heavy footsteps followed, shaking the ground slightly. Through the gaps between the branches, a pair of glowing red eyes appeared. The sound of low guttural breathing filled the air. Then, from behind the tree, something stepped forward. A figure, tall and monstrous. Its skin was deep green, covered in coarse black hair. Its limbs were long and powerful, its fingers ending in sharp claws. The face was grotesque, with wide, glaring eyes and a mouth full of jagged teeth. Budi's breath caught in his throat. Annie's fingers dug into his arm. The creature took a step forward, the ground trembling beneath its weight. It raised one clawed hand toward them. Budi and Annie squeezed their eyes shut, their bodies frozen in place, waiting for the inevitable. Seconds passed. Slowly, they opened their eyes. The jungle was gone. They were no longer beneath the tree. Instead, they sit inside a grand hall with a high ceiling. Sunlight streams in, illuminating the intricately carved pillars and ceiling, which depict scenes of warriors, beasts, and battles long forgotten. And in front of them, seated upon a colossal golden throne, was a man unlike any other. A king. His beard was thick and long, cascading down his chest like a river of black and silver. His eyes, dark and piercing, studied them with an amused curiosity. The silence stretched. Then, in a voice that echoed through the vast hall, the king spoke. "Why have you come?" Budi's knees nearly buckled. His mouth was dry, his tongue heavy. Ani clung to him, trembling. Swallowing his fear, Budi forced himself to speak. "We are suffering, Your Majesty. We have debts we cannot repay. Our store is failing. We seek wealth." The king leaned back, looking at them with a curious expression. "Wealth? Do you understand what you ask of me?" Budi and Ani exchanged glances. "We will do anything," Budi said, desperation edging his voice. A slow smile spread across the king's face. He tapped his fingers against the armrest of his throne. "Anything?" Budi nodded. "Yes, anything." The king chuckled, the sound reverberating through the chamber.
Then listen carefully.
He leaned back against his throne, drumming his fingers against the golden armrest.
I will grant you what you seek. The store will prosper. Your wealth will multiply. Your struggles will disappear.
Budi felt Annie's grip on his arm tighten. The king continued.
But there is a price.
Silence fell over the chamber. The king's eyes bore into theirs, his voice slow and deliberate.
You must give me one soul every year.
Annie gasped, covering her mouth with her trembling hands. Budi's stomach turned. A soul? The king nodded.
One life, one offering each year.
He tilted his head slightly, watching them.
That is my first condition.
Budi's mind raced. One soul. Someone had to die. He felt Annie's gaze on him, her face pale with horror, but the weight of their suffering pressed down on him. The years of struggle, the nights without food, the humiliation of begging for money, of feeling worthless. A soul. Could he do it? The king's voice cut through his thoughts.
The second condition is your firstborn child.
The air seemed to grow colder. Annie let out a strangled sound, her body swaying as if she might collapse. Budi's voice cracked. But we have no children.
You will. Very soon.
The king said. A chilling silence stretched between them. Annie clung to Budi, her body shaking. The weight of the offer was suffocating. The horror of what it meant, of what they would become, was unbearable. And yet, the promise of salvation loomed before them. Budi exhaled shakily. His voice was barely above a whisper. We accept. The king's laughter boomed through the hall.
Then it is done.
He raised his hand and clapped. Darkness swallowed them whole. When Budi and Annie opened their eyes, they were lying beneath the Gayam tree once more. The sky above them was no longer filled with stars. It was morning. The jungle was silent, the world unchanged. It felt like a long, terrible dream. They realized that exhaustion and hunger had played tricks on their minds, and all of this had been a waste of time. As Budi and Annie returned from X village, their minds were still clouded by the events they had experienced. The eerie encounter with the Buto Ijo king felt like a fever dream. As they approached their home, the sight before them made them freeze. A large crowd had gathered in front of their grocery store. Their voices blended into an agitated murmur, growing louder as Budi and Annie stepped closer. What's going on? Budi muttered, exchanging a bewildered glance with Annie. Some people in the crowd snapped at them. Where have you been? We've been waiting for hours. Open the shop already. Budi opened the store and the customers flooded inside, sweeping through the aisles like a hungry tide. Their hands grabbed at shelves, filling their baskets with everyday essentials. People barely glanced at the prices, buying in quantities far beyond what they normally would. How was this happening? Just days ago, they could barely sell a handful of items. Now, people were practically fighting over the goods. Some of them even told Annie to keep the change. By evening, the store's shelves were nearly empty. Annie wiped the sweat from her brow, exhaustion evident on her face, but there was a glint of excitement in her eyes. This is it, she whispered, her voice trembling. All the promotions, all our effort. Now it's paying off. And so it continued. Day after day, the store remained packed. Customers never stopped coming. They bought everything, No matter how much Budi and Ani restocked, it was never enough. The money flowed endlessly. Within weeks they had repaid all their debts. Within months they were richer than they had ever dreamed. Months passed and Ani's belly grew with life. The impossible had happened. She was pregnant. After years of waiting, years of longing, they had finally been blessed with a child. They were overjoyed. The day their child was born, tears streamed down Annie's face as she cradled the tiny baby in her arms. A son. It was a moment of pure happiness, the kind they had longed for all their lives. But beneath the joy there was something else, a shadow that lingered in the back of their minds. The memory of that night beneath the great Gayam tree. The Buto Ijo king's voice echoed in Budi's head.
You will have a child and I will take him.
The words of the Buto Ijo king echoed in their heads, suffocating their joy. Budi and Ani exchanged glances, their smiles faltering. For the first time since their son's birth, fear crept in, a fear that everything that happened beneath the Gayam tree that day was not a dream. Then the first signs appeared. Only days after birth, their baby grew weaker. His skin, once rosy, turned pale. He barely cried. He barely moved. His tiny body burned with fever, yet no doctor could determine the cause. Budi and Ani took him to every healer, every clinic, every hospital. They spent sleepless nights beside him, watching over him, hoping the next morning would bring a miracle. But it never did. Then, in the dead of night, the child let out one final fragile breath, and he was gone. Annie screamed. Budi fell to his knees. The house, once filled with dreams of a future with their son, was now drowned in silence. The moment their newborn took his final breath, Budi and Ani knew. The cold, lifeless body in Ani's trembling arms was not just a tragic loss. It was proof. Proof that the Buto Ijo king's promise was a reality indeed. Proof that their deal was sealed in blood. With that realization, their grief turned to fear. They remembered the rest of the deal. One soul every year. And if they failed? They didn't dare to find out. The first sacrifice had to be made. Budi remembered the ritual the elder had described. A special meal, prepared with ancient chants, would weaken the chosen victim. The sickness that followed would seem incurable, yet untraceable. Death would come slowly, and no one would suspect a thing. Their first target was chosen carefully. A new worker at their shop, young, eager to please, with no close family nearby. They singled him out, treating him kindly, making him feel valued. A raise in salary, small gifts, casual conversations that made him trust them. Then, when the time was right, they invited him to dinner. The meal was prepared with precision. Budi took Ani's hand and whispered the incantations they had learned. The food before them no longer carried mere flavor, but something far more sinister. The worker ate with gratitude, unaware of the fate sealed with every bite. Days later, he fell sick. A fever that would not break. A weakness that drained him with no cause. Medicine failed. Doctors were baffled. Within a week, he was gone. The next step was just as crucial. That night, under the cover of darkness, Budi and Ani crept into the cemetery and went straight to his grave. The fresh grave was still damp. Budi knelt, scooping handfuls of soil, his hands shaking as he placed them into a small cloth bag. They returned to the clearing where it had all begun, where the great Gayam tree stood silent under the moonlight. There, at the base of its roots, they scattered the grave soil, whispering their offering to the unseen. The ritual was complete, and so the cycle began. Every year they selected a victim, always an employee, always someone who trusted them. They followed the same steps, gain their trust, make them feel special, then invite them for dinner. The food was always prepared with the same chant, laced with the same unseen poison. No one ever survived. The soil was collected, the offering was made, the Buto Ijo king was satisfied. For years, the pattern went unnoticed. But patterns, no matter how carefully crafted, never remain hidden forever. Budi and Ani's store flourished beyond logic. While other shops struggled to stay afloat, theirs was always full of customers. People whispered about how they never seemed to suffer losses, how their wealth grew unnaturally fast. But the real unease came from within, their own employees. The workers began noticing something strange. Every year, without fail, one of them was treated differently. They would receive unexpected kindness from Budi and Ani, higher wages, gifts, warm smiles that felt just a little too forced. And then, without exception, that person would fall gravely ill shortly after being invited to dinner at their employer's home. It was never immediate. The sickness would creep in slowly. Fatigue, dizziness, a lingering weakness that no medicine could cure. No hospital could diagnose them. No treatment could save them. And within weeks, they would die. Fear spread like wildfire. Rumors reached the surrounding neighborhoods. The deaths, the sudden fortune, the eerie glow that sometimes flickered inside their home at night. People began to put the pieces together. It was a deal with the devil. A deal sealed with blood. The workers started quitting, one by one, until eventually no one dared to work for Budi and Ani anymore. The store, once thriving, struggled to function without staff. But that was only the beginning of their downfall. Without employees, they had no one to sacrifice, and the deadline was approaching. Budi and Ani tried to find alternatives. They attempted to befriend distant acquaintances, luring them with false kindness. But the rumors had spread too far. People avoided them. No one accepted their dinner invitations. Desperation turned to panic. The nights leading up to the deadline were filled with restless pacing, whispered arguments, sleepless eyes filled with fear. They knew what would happen if they failed. And then, the day arrived. A chill seeped into their bones. Their bodies ached, weighed down by an invisible force. It started as exhaustion, then pain, sharp, relentless, as if something was twisting their insides. They begged for mercy, but there was none. Their wealth, their success, it had all come at a cost they could no longer pay. Within days their bodies withered. No doctor could explain the rapid deterioration. Their skin grew pale, their breath shallow, and then, one after the other, they died. The store, once the symbol of their unnatural prosperity, was left abandoned. Their home stood empty, filled only with the echoes of their sins. After Budi and Ani's deaths, whispers about their dark dealings spread like wildfire. The once forgotten Gayam tree at the heart of X village became infamous, its roots tangled in stories of forbidden pacts and unseen forces. At first, only a handful of villagers spoke about it in hushed tones, how the couple's sudden wealth had come at an unspeakable price, how their failure to keep their end of the bargain led to their demise. But as time passed, more people began to take an interest. Those who were desperate, much like Budi and Ani once were, started seeking out the elder of X village, the same woman who had led the doomed couple to the tree. Some sought wealth, willing to trade their conscience for riches. Others wished for eternal youth, for beauty that would never fade. Some, driven by grief and rage, asked for vengeance against those who had wronged them. Each request came with a price, and the elder, now revered as a gatekeeper between worlds, guided them through the rituals. As the number of visitors grew, so did the unease among the villagers who had lived in X village long before the tree became infamous. Fear turned to anger. The villagers had had enough. They gathered, led by the village chief, and decided that the tree must be destroyed. But the moment axes and saws touched its bark, an eerie stillness fell upon the land. The air grew heavy, thick with an unseen force. The first swing of an axe barely left a mark. The second shattered the blade. Those who tried to cut it down grew dizzy. Some collapsed on the spot, convulsing as if something unseen had taken hold of their bodies. Others ran, screaming, before falling unconscious. The villagers, terrified yet determined, turned to the one force they believed could combat the darkness: their faith. Religious leaders were summoned, prayers were chanted, rituals were performed. Only then, after hours of relentless prayer, did the tree finally yield to the axes. As it fell, a thick red sap oozed from the splintered wood, staining the earth beneath it. The day the great Gayam tree fell, the village was never the same. Word of the tree's strange resistance to being cut down, how axes dulled against its bark, how men collapsed in fits of hysteria while trying to sever its trunk, spread far beyond the village. Stories grew wilder with each retelling. Some claimed the tree bled human-like blood when it was finally felled. Others believed that whatever dark forces had once been tied to the land had not vanished, but instead seeped into the soil, waiting. Decades passed, and so did everyone's memories. Only a few elders remained, living long enough to recount the tale of the once mighty Gayam tree. Weeds overtook the empty clearing where the tree had stood, making it look like just another ordinary patch of land in the middle of an abandoned banana plantation. The very land where elders once warned their children never to set foot had now become just another part of the village. Nothing scary, nothing special. So much so that its low price spoke louder than its grim history. One day, a couple from out of town, unaware of its past, took an interest in the land. The price was tempting, and its location was hard to ignore, just minutes away from one of Yogyakarta's prestigious universities. To them, the land was nothing more than the perfect business opportunity. And so, as many of you might have already guessed, they built a boarding house there, the very place where Ian and Rizki would later live for years, enduring its horrors. A boarding house that in time would become the source of a terrifying story, spreading fear through a viral Twitter thread and this video series. Now it all makes sense. The furry ghost Iqbal saw under the tree. The old lady ghost in red. The poltergeist incident. The ghostly apparitions. Like pieces of a puzzle, everything clicked. From Uncle How's vision, not only do we learn the context and the connection between each of the apparitions, but we also realize that every paranormal event Ian and Rizki experienced was a cry for help from the offerings and from every soul foolish enough to make a pact with the devil.
aja tanging nggonmu guling awas jangan aku lagi bang wingo wingo jen setan kang tak utusi Dadyo